Hello, it's me, your regularly black sweatered, slightly unshaven, what would I be called at this point? A rant tuber or whatever? Yeah, let's just call me a rant tuber. That sounds fun. But anyway, welcome back. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you, I wasn't really sure what to do for this video because there were two topics I had in mind. One, I kind of just wanted to bitch about Reform UK for a little bit, but then I realized maybe I could push that for next year, so that way we could do like a complete review of the party so far. So I'll save that for a later date. But what I wanted to talk about today, and I think something that is quite relevant, is Stranger Things. So, as many of you are probably aware, Stranger Things 5 has just finally released its a final season, and at this video's date, this video's publication, the finale hasn't come out yet. I already can. What I'm going to talk about doesn't really concern about like anything about the story or the plot, so you don't need to watch the entire series to understand what I'm going to be saying in this video. But yeah, no, I've been kind of wanting to rant about, uh, you know, Stranger Things for a while now because I think that if we're gonna all be pretty honest, the show has kind of gone to shit. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, when I was watching season 5, you know, I was trying to like get back into it. I already knew everything about the story so far, so I didn't need to go back to rewatch anything. But holy fuck, when I watched season 5, I was so bored. Genuinely, I was so bored. I was skipping entire sections of episodes every now and then. And it was like it's like I don't care what's going on. All the characters are just like boring to listen to. I don't care. Sure, they had the Nancy and Jonathan proposal bit and Will admitting he's gay, which, I mean, sure, some people may praise that as like nice moments, but I didn't care in the slightest about them. And it's just like, I don't care anymore. There's too many characters, too many things going on. The the plot itself, the final villains, the world that we're in, they're all just so boring, and I don't care. It flies over my head. All right, so that's the rant bit done. Let's dive a little bit more critically. So, to those who don't know, Stranger Things is a show about, a small town in Indiana that one day a kid goes missing because a monster kidnaps him. However, nobody knows what's going on. So various town folk, like some of the kid's friends, his mother and brother, and the local sheriff, work together to try and figure out what's going on. And along the way, a mysterious little girl comes out of the woods, revealing that she has psychic powers and is being hunted by the government, creating an interlocking narrative. Now, that premise alone is actually very good, and it worked quite well with season 1 of Stranger Things, where Friendly Space Ninja, I think, described it best when he said it was lightning in a bottle. Season 1 of Stranger Things was one of the most famous pieces of television to have ever been made. It was the most famous at the time, a limited series. It was the most famous limited series ever. It skyrocketed Netflix's, membership rates. It made them a lot of money. The directors and writers who made the show became famous overnight. What was supposed to be like kind of a niche, low-down project became a cultural phenomenon. And it was able to do that because of a clever combination of good writing, very good character work, mystery, ambiguity, horror, and, filling you with this ever growing sense of dread as you try to figure out, okay, what the fuck is going on? And it's season 1 of Stranger Things was genuinely a great piece of television. It was really good. So, yeah, as we all know by now, season 1 of Stranger Things is considered where it's both the best thing to have ever happened, and because of how it ended, it could have easily just been that, just season 1. And I think everyone would have preferred that because, well, Netflix saw the money. And can you guess what happened next? Yeah, that's right. They kept making more seasons. Yay! But anyway, so after the success of season 1, season 2 came out. And to be honest, like, some people complain, some people say it's not that good. But if I'm going to be honest, I think it actually serves as a pretty good sequel. You know, they keep the ambiguity. You're not really sure what's going on. You get little hints of, like, you know, the monsters that are coming from the upside down. You know, we see that Will is not truly free of the monsters. The characters are not trying to, like, defeat a new big bad. They're trying to cut off the connection from the original big bad, which was the upside down, who was trying to, like, you know, get into our world and all that, and save Will along the way. You know, and I think the way it works is pretty good. It's not as brilliant as season 1, but if there are some little pieces that I did enjoy from season 2, I thought it was the relationship between the sheriff and Eleven, or Jane as she's called. You know, how they form a sort of adoptive father-daughter bond. Will and his friends bond of them just trying to figure out what the hell is going on. Nancy and Nancy and Jonathan, they're fine. I don't really have anything to say about them. And Steve and Dustin's growing dynamic, I thought it was one of the most entertaining things I've ever seen. You know, the cool jock kid becomes best friends with, like, the nerdy kid. And I thought that's, like, it was honestly kind of sweet watching it. So yeah, season 2, not the best, but it has, like, tons of different, like, little aspects that I think make it, in some aspects, even better than season 1. I'm not saying it is definitively better. It just is better in certain aspects. But overall, I thought season 2 was, if season 2 was the last season, I think it would have actually ended very well, you know? Because unlike season 1, season 2 actually ends off with, you know, the big bad literally cut off from our world. Will is saved, he's free. Eleven and, what's his name again? Mike. I you know, I'm gonna bitch about him later, but I literally keep forgetting his name. But yeah, Eleven and Mike are able to, you know, form their little boyfriend-girlfriend bond. Oh my god, there's too many characters. I keep forgetting their names. Oh, Nance. No. Fuck. See, that's the problem with the show. There's just too many characters. I'm forgetting their names as I'm recording this. But anyway, Will's mom and Hopper, you know, they form a good friendship bond. And, you know, there's just all these factors that work together to create a pretty good season of television. And, you know, in the ending, we see that, yeah, the thing in the Upside Down, it's not dead yet, but it is closed off, meaning that it can't reconnect with our world. So that literally we defeated it. You know, we won. The show could have ended right then and there. You know, because the threat literally can't reach us anymore, right? Well, there's something you're forgetting, bitches. It's set in the 80s. And what else was in the 80s other than, like, D&D, mystery, American corruption, and so on? I'll give you a hint. It starts with an S. That's right. It's the Soviets. Okay. Let me put it this way. Seasons 1 and Season 2 were small, interconnected, quite claustrophobic settings and stories that all take place in the same location. You know, you don't really see it going out anywhere else. It stays in one location. All of the tragedies are local, And so we don't feel too overwhelmed when new information is given because it's still in the same area. They're still attacking the singular place, which is Hawkins. So when season 3 released, and I saw that when I saw that the show was now introducing the fucking Soviet Union as the new bad guys. Holy shit, man. What the hell is this? Why are the communists in my little outback American story? What does they have to do with anything? And it's like, okay, when that was revealed, that just took me out fully from like this sort of oddly plausible setting that Stranger Things had created in seasons 1 and 2. What I mean by plausible is that, like, yeah, they're absolutely ridiculous situations there, but they're horrifying, they're intimate. And it's like, it's like they're not going to go anywhere else till they deal with us and Hawkins. Till they deal with the protagonist in Hawkins. And it's like, okay, I could immerse myself in this because it's a crazy situation. The people are scared and they're trying to stop it. And they do. They win. And it's like, okay, I can get behind that. But when you bring one of the principal world powers that, dominated the Cold War, the USSR, and then make them the new reason why, the Upside Down begins its shenanigans again, that just completely ruins the narrative immersion you have that the show garnered in the first 2 seasons. Because now, with the Soviet Union coming in, the story is no longer a little local, intimate, kind of believable thing that is happening. Now it's like a global espionage thing. And so we see that in season 3, the Soviets are the ones who create a new portal to the Upside Down. And it makes the Mind Flayer begin its plans once again. And it begins abducting people, adding it to a hive mind. But this time, because of how, like, the show has been acting, the threat in the Mind Flayer was kind of frightening in season 2, But now, in season 3, it really is just kind of a boring villain because it's just a big, fleshy... that's it. My burp just described it. A big, fleshy burp that is not really intimidating. And it doesn't really, like, give you... It doesn't have the same amount of threat as, like, the okay, in season 1, the Demogorgon was a terrifying beast because it was just a wild animal that just went about just eating people and nobody knew why it was doing anything, and it could travel between dimensions, reappear anywhere, eat people, kill them. It was a pretty terrifying threat because you didn't know where the Demogorgon was going to come from. In season 2, the Mind Flayer, the big shadow being that emerged, it was a being that literally crossed the boundaries between our reality and the Upside Down, It had a whole hive of beasts that would go to our world in overwhelming numbers, slaughtering everything it saw, and it was using Will as sort of like a sleeper agent. The threats in those 2 seasons were pretty terrifying because you didn't understand them. It was new to see. It was terrifying. And then season 3 comes along. The Soviet Union is one of the bad guys, and we all know how the Soviets are. And the Mind Flayer comes back again, except this time, because we understand how it works, it's not as scary or as threatening or as, unique as it was. So yeah, we see the Mind Flayer come about. It starts to terrify in the town again. But alongside that, there's just the... How do I put this? There's just the really dumb plot things that now happen between the character dynamics, where it's just like, Mike and Eleven are just like, doing stupid, dramatic girlfriend boyfriend things. They have a breakup and then they get back together. Uh, Will. Actually, I quite like Will in this. I like Will as a character in all the seasons because he's a kid who just like struggles because he's constantly forced into situations he never asked to be in. He struggles with his identity. He feels isolated. He feels like everyone else is moving on without him, and and Will is honestly a character that I could relate to because I've had those feelings before. So yeah, Will is a pretty good character. So I'll leave him be. Um, well, that is until season 5. But anyway, so yeah, Dustin and Steve keep doing their little shenanigans. Every time they're on screen, I actually enjoy watching them because they're quite funny. And if there was just an entire show about those two, they could pull it off. I swear, they could do anything. Those two. But yeah, and then Lucas. Lucas is kind of like he's kind of a really boring character, to be honest. Like in season 1. Actually, wait a minute. I don't really know what the purpose of Lucas is. He just kind of feels like an extra, which is kind of a shame. And I don't really know how to think of him other than just like kind of a prop or, you know, an extra character that the audience uses to like figure out what's going on. Then there's Hopper in season 3. He's just a slightly overweight, kind of fat action hero with a big burly mustache. And then there's what's his name again? Like the guy with the beard who has the bowl head. It was like Murray, was it? Yeah, Murray. People say they hate Murray, and people say they also love him. I don't know how to honestly feel about Murray, if I'm going to be entirely honest with you. Because to me, he just feels like kind of a nothing burger of a character, you know? He doesn't really contribute anything. He's pretty boring overall. And he's just a crazy conspiracy theorist. Well, he doesn't even he's not even a conspiracy theorist at this point. He's like the guy that you find in video games that just gives you advice on situations, except they're like kind of annoying about it. That's kind of what Murray is at that point. And then we have Nancy and Jonathan again. They're having relationship issues. Except with Nancy's case, I think season 3 does a pretty good job of kind of just giving us like a brief little glimpse into just how like sexist the 80s were, especially for a woman like Nancy who is very independent, is trying to find her way in the world, and yet she's expected to just be the one that like makes coffee for the men. So yeah, I kind of appreciated that. Jonathan, I don't know what the fuck he's doing, so I don't care about him. And then there's Will's mom. She forms a closer bond with Hopper as she and him are trying to figure out what the Soviets are doing. And yeah, season 3 just has like very small nuggets of good, but then the rest of it is just kind of mediocre to pretty boring. I skipped out a lot on it's. The thing is that after season 2, I've just gotten into this trend of like skipping over large sections of episodes just to get to the point or to an interesting bit, which is a real shame because it kind of really tells you how just the plot and the storytelling went, because it was just too ridiculous for me at that point. It was just so boring. And oh yeah, there was that Russian guy, the one who looks kind of like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Just Arnold. Arnold, the guy who plays the Terminator. We had that character. I don't know why he exists other than just to play the Russian trope of like the hard ass guy who's just ultra committed to death and the USSR. He wasn't really needed, to be honest. And yeah, and then there was that ending letter apparently they're from Hopper, which apparently was supposed to like make people cry, but I did not give a rat's ass about it. I probably skipped that too until I look back on it for this video. And yeah, and then season 3 ends with 11, Will, and Will's mom moving out to California to start a new life, which pretty reasonable choice if I could be honest. And yeah, that's season 3. If you thought my rant was an incoherent one, yeah, that's the entire feeling I've had for season 3. It's really incoherent, really boring, and it's like, why did we need another season of this? And the whole Soviet angle. They keep bringing back the Soviets in every single season somehow, even though we don't fucking need them. We didn't even need them in the first place, but continue on. Let's take a little break before we talk about season 4 and 5. Let's talk about the characters. In season 1, there were a lot of characters, yeah, but it wasn't an overwhelming number yet. They were all kind of interconnected. They all worked together. They all served a purpose of the plot, and they were all useful. And they worked together. They had chemistry. It worked. It was pretty funny to watch sometimes because you just have these utterly ridiculous interactions between like Nancy and Steven, Jonathan and literally everyone else, Mike, Lucas and Dustin, 11, Will's mother, and Hopper. They all had wacky interactions with each other, but they all served the purpose of the plot, and each of them would have chemistry. It worked very well. But, as I said before, Friendly Space Ninja is a pretty good authority on Stranger Things, I would have to say so for myself, because he's good to notice how, over time, each of the characters get Flanderized, which to those who don't know what that means you take like Flanders and you make Flanders kind of like, Flanders was a pretty well-rounded character, but they took one trait of his, which is like his religiousness, and kind of like made that his only personality trait, hence Flanderization. But yeah, with every single Stranger Things characters, they oddly enough started out quite nuanced, had layers, and so on. But, like Shrek once said, when you peel away an onion, it has layers. But it looks like the writers cut away all of the layers of that onion and just left us with the core. And that's what happened to each of the characters. They all got Flanderized and, had their layers cut off to make pretty boring one-trait archetypes that stopped being useful. And none of them would die. That's not even a joke. Every single one of the main characters, all of them, no matter how much they suffer, or actually, they all lack suffering, they all live. None of them die, even though a lot of them should have. God, that sounds kind of dark when you hear that out of context. But, no, really. A sign of a good show is a show that is willing to sacrifice some of its characters as long as it serves a narrative purpose. Or if they do let all of the main characters live, that each of those characters serve a purpose and are still well developed, nuanced, and interesting. I think what's a good example? Adventure Time is a good example of a show that lets all of its characters live and serve very good roles and purposes. And it's like, yeah, you have like hundreds of characters, but because each of them are so interesting, each of them get their own episode, you don't really forget about them. And yeah, Adventure Time is a good example of letting all of the characters live. If there's an example of a book that lets all of its characters die, but it still does well, I would have to say maybe the early seasons of Game of Thrones, because we see that, It was like a thing where no, even better example, The Walking Dead. Comics or the show, the in the earlier seasons, the main characters would be allowed to die. Like Rick, Sean, Rick's son, Rick's wife, the old guy from the farm in season 2, the governor, Angela, the black lady who sat with the CDC director in season 1 and blew herself up with him. Dale, all of them pretty lovable characters, but they all died off at one point. Until that show stopped caring about killing them off and made them all invincible. But I digress. What I'm trying to say is that Stranger Things fails to either do both. They stop making their characters interesting and nuanced, and they don't kill off enough characters to drive the plot forward. Everyone fucking lives, which is really annoying. It's kind of how we got the Justice for Barbara movement that appeared online after season 1, because Barbara, to those who don't know, was Nancy's best friend but was killed off by the Demogorgon, and it got people upset that they never really, solved her mystery or gave her justice. And the show writers attempted to reconcile that, but it didn't really work out. So yeah. Look, I'm not going to go over every single character and how they stopped being interesting, but I am going to say this. If you were to go to season 5 and cut out like about 60% of the characters that we see, you wouldn't really be affecting anything. I mean, you could probably kill off half the cast, and the show would still go on pretty well without most of them. Sure, they'd have some challenges, but yeah, the plot would continue the same. Like, the one who I think is the most endemic of this problem is Mike and Lucas. Those fuckers do absolutely nothing. They stop being interesting. Mike is now a simp for Eleven, and Lucas is also a simp for Matt. Oh god. The two OG characters degraded into simps who do nothing except talk about how much they love their girlfriends. Like, that's not a bad thing in real life, but as a character in a narrative, that stops being interesting, and it's kind of cringe. But yeah, we took that break, we talked about the characters and how they pretty much stopped being interesting. Let's talk about season 4, which some praise it as like a return to the natural order of how things should be for the show, where they apparently brought back that mystery, the horror, the tense vibes, the dread. I mean, technically they did that. I will give the people who like season 4 that. They brought back the aesthetic and all that. But a problem is that this season, if I'm going to be entirely honest, was so fucking boring. Genuinely, it was so boring. I don't even know what happened in that season. Other than like Vecna appearing. And yeah, I don't know what happened. I don't know what's going on. Because the characters are just so boring. They're just exposition machines. They don't do anything interesting with any of the characters. I mean, they have that Eddie character, but I don't care about Eddie. He's just a stoner. You got... What else do we have? Oh my god, I do not know what the point is in this season. I guess the main conflict is that Vecna is trying to, like, kidnap and kill people in, like, a ritual in order to, like, make connection with the the normal world via the Upside Down, and we learn that the Upside Down is not just the Upside Down. There's another realm, which is where Vecna's from, and he's trying to like take over our world, and 11 is trying to reconnect with her powers in order to stop that. And it's like, oh my god. And then we brought back Dr. Brenner, which is like, why? He died. He was killed by the Demogorgon. Why did we bring him back? How did he live? How did a bunch of special forces die before he did? And then the government, and then the army comes back to try and kill him. They fail miserably. And yeah, I don't know what to say about this. Because nobody does anything. Nothing happens. Things just are explained even though we don't need them. The lore is kind of confused because apparently in 1983, 11 opened the gate, even though canonically it's said that the Upside Down has taken the shape of our world in 1985. And Vecna is apparently the god of the Upside Down and the Abyss and whatever. And yeah, I don't know what to say. It's so boring and pointless, and nothing makes sense. Oh, by the way, there's this whole Hopper subplot because apparently he survives the explosion from season 3, and he's come back to life. And he's, just in the Soviet Union, in a fucking gulag, forced to do forced labor. And it's like, why? Why can't we just let him die? Let him die! And then, oh my god, yeah, Will's mom, Murray, they go to the Soviet Union via a smuggler. The two get into the gulag, they find Hopper, they get him out, Will's mom and Hopper bang, and they're now in love, before they go back into that gulag to kill the Demogorgon who was in there, because apparently the Soviets have been harvesting, monsters from the Upside Down in order to try and weaponize them against the US, which, honestly, if the governments of the U.S. and Soviet Union were trying to weaponize that a little bit more, I think that could have been a pretty cool subplot. Kind of like in Metal Gear, where the USSR or Russia and the US are trying to like build the biggest, baddest weapon, but in Stranger Things it could have been like, they're trying to find the biggest, baddest monsters to like use to kill each other, which could have been a pretty fun idea, but pretty underused if I'm gonna be honest. But yeah, that's the problem with season 4. Things just happen and nothing means anything, and nothing also happens. And I don't know what to say at that point. And how does it end? The four people who died, their bodies then form like an X around Hawkins, and it causes a massive earth hellquake that like destroys so much of the town, kills a lot of people, and now a portal has erupted in the middle of Hawkins, where they're now claiming to want to go to where the U.S. government is trying to, like, contain it, and the Vecna is trying to use it to begin to prepare his invasion plans, So, yeah, that happens. Now, Season 5. Season 5, if I'm going to be entirely honest, I think it's just when the show just gives up entirely. Like, I don't know. At this point in season 5, Vecna is apparently trying to use children to harvest their mind powers, their aura farming, to connect our world with his in order to invade it, or like to become a god, essentially. Which, Yeah, don't know what that means. Yeah, that burp should explain everything. God, my burps are doing more to articulate my pain with this show. But anyway, uh, so when it comes to season 5, if I'm going to be entirely honest, oh my god, that just explained it. It really is just a really boring season of television that nothing happens again. You know, nothing changed. They have a new big bad named Dr. K, who's apparently using pregnant women to like make more children, like 11. And yeah, uh, I really don't get what's going on anymore. Genuinely, I don't know what's happening. Oh yeah, and then we had that reveal in like episode 4 of season 5, I believe, where after Vecna does some aura farming and then murders an entire U.S. base, uh, Will suddenly gets psychic powers for some reason and kills a bunch of Demogorgons and saves his friends from 3 different points of the map. You know, he's doing wall hacks, and yeah, I don't know what to say at this point. Oh, and what else? Oh yeah, he later on admits that he's gay to everybody, which honestly, I think that could have been like a really heartwarming scene if it was done a lot better, where instead of just being a ramble like the rants I'm doing, where he just says nothing and everything at once, I wish he was honestly a bit more direct in what he was trying to say. You know, like admitting that he was struggling with his sexuality, but he just wants to admit that to everyone. I'm not trying to like minimize the sort of pain he's probably feeling if Will was a real person, but you know, it's a really frustrating thing to see, and I don't say this as a gay person, you know, so I can't really say that. But I think with anything like a very deep personal struggle, you need to be clear and direct what that struggle is and feel confident enough to tell people this. You know, so honestly, I really wish that that entire scene was just rewritten a lot better. But I do appreciate the groundwork building up to it, you know, the sort of budding friendship that he and Robin have during the build up to that scene. But yeah, so far, uh, what else? Oh yeah, oh yeah, so you remember how in season 2 we were introduced to that, what's her name again? You know, the Indian looking person, season 2, 6 character. Nah, I don't know why, but it just started like giving me random things about Fortnite battle passes. Stranger Things character 6. Yeah, 6. Where no wait, no fuck. Uh god damn, I keep forgetting this. Uh uh was it, oh my god, I'm really trying to figure this out. Genuinely, this is a live thing. I'm literally looking up the wiki to try and figure this out. Uh Oh my god, also Will's mom is named Joyce. I don't know how that didn't cross my mind. Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, 8. 8, the character, 8. But yeah, okay, so we got 8. So 8 comes back for some reason in episode 4, and in episode 4 season 5, you know. if anybody remembers her from season 2, she's basically the girl who runs like a little street gang with some freaks, and we're basically trying to do like the whole Suicide Squad thing, where they have this funky bunch, where they have the funky bunch of like a bunch of street delinquents. And nobody likes that episode, and apparently they were planning a spin-off, but that never got off the ground. Because, let's be honest, what's her name again? Yeah, because 8 is just not an interesting person. Oh, and just for your information, her actual name in the story, other than 8, is Kali Prasad. So, see, right there, Kali Prasad. Just a little interesting fact. But anyway, she comes back, and she's really boring. Where she doesn't really do anything except formulate a unaliving plan. I got to be careful with how I use certain words on because YouTube. Where she plans out a unaliving plan with 11 that after they defeat Vecna, then they need to close off the gateway between the Upside Down, the psionic powers, and the US government forever by destroying the Upside Down and themselves along with it to give the world permanent safety by never letting what happened in Hawkins happen again. Which, to be honest, at that point, I think that's a very interesting idea. And I genuinely mean that, That's actually a really cool, dilemma that 11 has to deal with, And I actually can't wait to see how that goes when the finale comes out. And I hope they commit to that, where 11, 8, the Upside Down, Vecna, they all die off, and then the rest of the world can go on in peace, and hopefully never have to remember what happens. If they do that, if they commit to that idea, and it makes sense, I will honestly forgive the show just a little bit, because at least there will be a conclusion that will mean that they never make another season of this show again. But yeah, okay, so I just talked about, the general thing about how each season sucked more and more. I really ranted a lot, but, I'm not making this video just to be like that contrarian you sometimes see on YouTube who just bitches about, popular things. No, I am ranting here because I do like the show, and I genuinely care about it, and it saddens me to see how it went. And it's it's really depressing to see such a good show just, die off into, whatever the hell it is now. So, yeah. I think that after this, I don't know what I'm going to do when Stranger Things is over. Because, what would even be the point of constantly reminiscing on it anymore at that point? So, yeah. This is just my thoughts on Stranger Things. If you have any ideas for videos, please let me know in the comments down below. I think for the next video I'm just gonna talk a little bit on. I'm just gonna do another rant. I think this time on what should I rant about? Let's go a little bit risky. Let's move away from the world of fiction into the real world. Let's bitch about. Let's rant about the French.